Evening all, welcome to Arch and Towers. David Freezer here alongside our chief Norwich City correspondent Paddy Davitt, and fingers crossed we're not going to have the technical problems that we had on Friday when first the sound thwarted us and then the internet connection. So far so good. Pad, we are not long back from Colney, speaking to Daniel Farke and Grant Hanley, and team news is pretty simple today, isn't it?
Yeah, in contrast to our aborted Friday Facebook Live when we were opining of various injury concerns. Now, clean bill of health according to the manager. Obviously a little bit of tiredness, inevitably, given it's quite a quick turnaround, but I think he'll counteract that with 2 or 3 changes. That's kind of what he intimated to us, wasn't it? But in terms of availabilities, then none of the lads who were available on Sunday are not going to be available this time round. So it's just a case really of how he decides to shuffle his pack a little bit. But yeah, it's good news. It's good news because you would fear that a game of that nature and everything that went into that, the emotional, the physical, the end as well, how draining that would have been. But no, it sounded quite positive, and you can understand if you're one of those players, you do not want to be missing out on Wolves away, do you? Yeah,
big time league leaders. They're doing so well, aren't they? Lost one of the last 17. I mean,
is it 1 out of 17?
Lost one of the last 17 in the league, that is, because they've had a few FA Cup games in the mix as well. But yeah, I mean, they are the standout team in the division, and when they won 2-0 at Carrow Road in October, it was obvious then that they were well on their way, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Daniel today, the only game he more or less said at Carrow Road where it was a case of they're too good. Anything Norwich would have tried that night just would have come up short.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was evident. Anybody who was there watching it, that there was a gulf on the night. But Daniel said it, Grant Hanley both said it. They feel this is a better Norwich collective now than when they played only 2 or 3 months ago, and you would have to say that probably is the case, because they were just in that kind of prolonged downturn, weren't they, as well, as good as Wolves were on the night. But they didn't really lay a glove on that, and I think tomorrow night, certainly there's no pressure on Norwich. There's pressure's all on Wolves now. They can see the Premier League on the horizon looming into view, and they need to get the job done as quick as possible. So you look at the last 6 league games for both teams, it's identical: 3 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat. So plus the nature of Norwich's comeback on Sunday, they'll certainly fancy they can get something out of it. There might not be too many who gives them a chance outside of Norwich, but for me that's an interesting one, and that's the point. One of the points I tried to put to Daniel today was, irrespective of the result, this is almost a benchmark now, because Wolves are quite rightly the best side in the division. They're 11 points clear. That tells you this period into the season, it's not a fluke now. The league table confirms where everybody is and where they deserve to be. So if Norwich go and do a Derby County type performance and get a very positive result, that to me tells me, this is a group of players and a head coach who are on the right track.
You'd suspect that's going to be the minimum level of performance needed to get anything tomorrow night. I mean, they are well on track for the Premier League. Daniel had suggested to you after the Ipswich game on Sunday that Ivo Pinto is likely to come back in, and he followed that up today. And we also pushed him a bit on the new boys, Onel Hernandez, Dennis Shrabeni, obviously not really had a full chance yet, and it sounds like he's certainly toying with the idea of giving them more game time at the minimum tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I think the line was both. Well, all the new guys, Leitner aside, because he's kind of been in and around it, but all the other guys who came in January, they're pretty close now to getting a lot more minutes than the odd cameo here or there. So if you take him at face value, he wants to freshen up tomorrow, then I think that to me would indicate 2 to 3 changes. Pinto, I think, for Reed's an obvious one. And it's you look at maybe Josh Murphy. Is it time maybe to give Hernandez a go, or Marley Watkins another go? And I think from what Daniel was saying, reading between the lines, I think he'd like to get Vrancic in the side tomorrow. So that's just a case for me of who do you perm out of Leitner, Vrancic, Tete? Bearing in mind, I think you made the point quite rightly that maybe Bolton at home is the key game of the next 2. Certainly the most winnable of the 2. So do you put Tete into a little bit of storage tomorrow night and give Vrancic and Leitner a go? Bearing in mind, I think the way Wolves play, the way they played at Carrow Road, is if you're a technical midfielder, you'll probably get a bit more time on the ball, certainly than they did on Sunday against Ipswich. So I think it's the sort of game you could probably put Vrancic in. I would think if I was a betting man, I think it'd be Vrancic, Pinto definites, and then maybe Hernandez, maybe Watkins. Shrubeni, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I think you've persevered so much with Oliveira now, you're almost compelled to go again with him, I think.
It's going to be quite a statement to drop him at this point,
would be,
isn't it?
It would be. And again, there's, I can see both sides of the argument, but there was a very good save from Bialkowski in the second half. It just feels like he's not far away, but how many more chances do you give him? And that's ultimately the big dilemma, because if you're relying on one centre-back crossing to another one to score goals, then there's only so many games that's going to happen, isn't there? So
after Tim, of course, crossing for Jamal Lewis as well at Chelsea. So.
Exactly. So it's a huge concern, and it for me now is the main topic between now and the end of the season. Can they get some serious goal output at the top end of the pitch?
For me, Bolton has got to be the priority. Obviously, you need to put out a team tomorrow which is capable of dealing with Wolves, or at least hanging in there long enough to try and get something from the game. And I just can't see them getting anything out of the game without Teti playing, because you're going to need that defensive holding midfielder. And Bolton, we saw them up at their place. They won it 2-1, of course.
Yeah, but Norwich were poor.
Norwich were awful that day, weren't they? I mean, that was the performance which sealed Cameron Jerome's fate pretty much, because he was fairly dreadful that day, wasn't he? Albeit with a few fitness issues and things like that. But
that's right. Yeah, in the first half, I remember that. Yeah.
While you were just talking about the game at Carrow Road as well, of course, Marley Watkins hit the post, didn't he, at 0-0 against Wolves?
He did.
So
he did. Yeah.
If one player is going to come in, I think, while you were just saying that, I was thinking it does seem more likely you'd put in Watkins ahead of Shrubeni, but perhaps maybe for Josh. But as Daniel put it, he's not going to make 10 changes. No. He's going to make changes, but not 10. Let's have a quick dive into comments, and you guys are talking about captain material. Sam Gooderham says Tim Closer for future Norwich captain. James Balls is in Grant Hanley's camp, as is Andrew Todd Nichols. David Howes agrees as well. Craig Brown says start with Shrubeni, drop Oliveira. Now, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of fans saying that now, but as we said, I mean, it's 11 games without a goal. That is clearly not good enough. But to be fair, that was a cracking save from Bialkowski from in the second half on Sunday, and it was on target. So that is an improvement for Nelson on recent weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, and I'm trying to think. I mean, Derby away. Obviously the penalty aside, but there was 2 or 3 chances there, and Carson denied him. And you understand Farke saying it's a striker's lot, and you go through these runs, but how deep and how prolonged can you afford to allow him to go through this sort of run?
Daniel knows he was a striker, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, tomorrow night, that's the club he was heavily linked with, a club who basically going towards the Premier League. I'm not putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5, but I'm sure he'd be keen to impress. Portuguese setup. I think his agent Mendes is heavily involved behind the scenes there at Wolves.
His and Cristiano Ronaldo's agent.
Apparently so. Portuguese manager. I think I'm not saying he lacks motivation at the moment, but I think that's the sort of stage. If Farke was to say, right, you go sit on the bench tonight, I'm not sure that would go down too well. We've seen that side of his character before, so I'd be inclined to go the other way and say, look, there's the stage tonight. Go and show how good a player you are. Really prove that you're as good as any of those lads in gold shirts. Bonatini, he was very good down here, wasn't he? I think he's tailed off a little bit in terms of the goal output, but if I was Daniel Farke, I'd be telling Oliveira, show you're better than any of their front players. But I think the moment is coming. 11 games and counting. I mean, that's really not good enough, is it? In terms of the goal output, which is what you should have to measure a striker by. And it's not like he's not getting chances, but if he's not taking them, then what's to be lost by throwing in Shrubeni? But maybe not for tomorrow night. I think Wolves away is a little bit difficult task for a guy who was plying his trade in the third tier in Germany a month ago. So, Bolton at home. If it's another blank from Oliveira tomorrow night, then I think Bolton might be his opportunity.
It almost feels a bit too harsh, doesn't it, to put Hernandez and Shrubeni in, because if they don't play well, it would be understandable, but it might just knock their confidence a little bit. So I think it's a delicate one for Daniel. Question here about Josh Murphy. Paul Albert, is Josh Murphy playing well enough to keep his place?
Well, you did the player watch on him, didn't you?
I did on Sunday. I mean, we sort of, not completely randomly how we picked the player watch, but I suspected that maybe Josh was due a goal. Of course, Jacob had scored in the home derby last season. So I thought that maybe Josh was on for a good performance and it would be worth keeping an eye on him. But you know, it's difficult to judge him too harshly because he's almost playing as a bit of a striker at the moment, isn't he? But
he
I think the whole of this season we've never really seen. I mean, he's got 8 goals in all competitions because of his League Cup exploits, but I don't feel like we've ever really seen the Josh Murphy that we know he can be. He just seems that a little bit too hesitant to me.
Well, I mean, you mentioned his twin, and you have to draw the parallel. By this stage of last season, Jacob Murphy had put his stamp on Norwich's team. He was probably Norwich's best player over the entire piece. Breakthrough season for the guy. Was offering goals, was offering assists, and we know how that panned out. Went off with the 21s at the European Championships that summer, and then got his big move to Newcastle. The reality is, you know, let's be totally honest. Josh hasn't made the same strides, and yeah, okay, there is an element that he is maybe being asked to do a slightly different role at the minute, more centrally, but there's just a lack of conviction about his play too often. You know, he flatters to deceive a little bit for me. There's no doubt the guy's got talent. You know, probably more talent than his twin, but you know, I hark back to Alex Neil, who more or less intimated that the penny had dropped with Jacob, and he understood that it was both with the ball and without the ball. He was able to take on board, you know, the tactical side of what he needed to do within the team framework.
I think Josh has done that okay this year.
To a degree, but but he's not influencing games as his twin was at this stage, was he? So, you know, ultimately that's why there's a debate around him. You know, there was no debate around Jacob Murphy this time last season. He was firmly a fixture in that championship lineup, and yeah, I don't think that's the case for his twin at the minute.
Okay, well, Dave Howells and Craig Brown are both in the Hernandez camp. I mean, it'd be interesting. I did sort of ask Daniel a bit more about him, didn't I? And sort of, is he very similar to Josh? And he said that pace is O'Neill's biggest attribute, but he is generally a wide player rather than a striker, and so it's that you're then talking in the same kind of realms as Josh, aren't you? Josh is trying to do a job. I mean, how many times on Sunday was he? Sunday, sorry, can't get my head around the game. The Ipswich game's on Sunday. Was Josh trying to hold up the ball on halfway, which isn't his natural role? But I mean, he gave it a good go. It's not, you know, no one can level at Josh that he's not trying. He's almost trying too hard, maybe at times, but. I mean, do you think it's fair to say that maybe Hernandez and Srebeni we'll see more of them tomorrow night, even if they don't start?
Depends how the game pans out, I suppose. But it is a difficult one because, you know, you contrast the top end of the pitch now with defensively. Well, you know, you don't need to be a UEFA A qualified coach now to realise that Angus Gunn, Hanley, Zimmerman, Closer, lockdown job. You know, one side Lewis, other side Pinto / Reed. There is a complete uniformity that is Norwich's best defensive unit, and the reason that is the case now is because those guys have grabbed their chance both individually and collectively, and the results, the clean sheets, the goals against are all indicators that is completely bottomed down now. Farke has absolutely got the platform, the base as he talks about, to build, but then you contrast that with the top end of the pitch and it's the complete opposite. You know, there's no striker / attacking player, Madison aside, who's really put their stamp on it, and that's why there's all these debates. That's why the goals against Colney is so poor. That's why it's literally every game is a grind, and it's get a goal, defend. You know, get a goal. It's not get a goal, get a second, get a third, and then cruise to the finish line. And until you can crack it, and the big question then is it the current players, or does it need another window in the summer? And to move 1 or 2 more on, bring 1 or 2 more in, allow Srebeni another 6 months to acclimatise and really get the ground running next season. Same with Hernandez. At the minute, it's a little bit, feels like just throwing the pieces up and hopefully they'll all come together. But I think the reality is, and Hernandez and Srebeni, it's not this season, it's next season. You can only really judge those guys.
Okay. I did ask Daniel a bit more on Dennis Srebeni today, and he said he liked his body language when he came on against Ipswich. So he did. He certainly said with both of them, they're both close to getting more minutes, didn't he? So an interesting comment here on Harrison Reed, who he just mentioned. Andrew Toad Nichols, harsh to drop Reed. He's done a decent job. Of course, he's been filling in for Ivo Pinto at right wing back.
Very harsh.
Maybe it is a little bit harsh. I mean, I suppose it may come down to whether he is needed to fill in for Tetty in the middle. Perhaps he'll just move into central midfield again. But I think he's done a solid job. He certainly hasn't let Daniel down there. But I wouldn't say he's been brilliant. as a right wing back either.
No, and you might debate it, but at least with Pinto, you do get the sense that there's a bit of forward thrust, that bombing down that right flank with his pace. You could also say there's not a lot of end product comes from those forays, but it does get Norwich higher up the pitch, and within the sort of what they're trying to do, I think he's certainly a better attacking weapon in that wing-back role, no question. But Reed's been very steady. You don't lose anything defensively with Reed in the side, because that's not really Pinto's forte, shall we say. But I just think in terms of the attacking dimension, I would rather see Pinto in there. And ultimately, Pinto is a full-back / wing-back. Reed is still more or less a midfielder who's asked to do a job out there and has done it very well, don't get me wrong. I think that's a very good point you make. You probably need to throw him in the mix with Vrancic, Leitner, Tete for tomorrow night, because it would be tough on the lad to take him straight back out. But then, you know, Farke did it with Vrancic, so it's not beyond the realms. But yeah, it's an interesting one, that. But I just think, if Pinto's fit now, and by all indications he is, then he's the captain of the team. You get him back in.
Absolutely. There was a couple of moments in the derby on Sunday that I thought emphasised why Alex Tete is ahead of Harrison Reed in the pecking order, when he just did those little bits and pieces to clear up. I think it was Waghorn maybe in the second half nearly broke through on halfway, and Alex just won a header that Harrison Reed probably wouldn't have been able to, just because of his lack of height, and he got a big cheer from the crowd. And it's just those little bits and pieces of physicality that Alex has over Harrison. I mean, as a snap poll, let us know, comment below, just very simply, Pinto or Reed, who would you start tomorrow night? Derek Weir thought Oliveira was good Sunday. Only good goalkeeping stopped him from scoring. Mark Hayhoe wants Darren Huckabee for captain. Bring him back.
Darren Huckabee?
That would be all right. He was up on the radio gantry at Carrow Road on Sunday, wasn't he?
See, Mark is also, to underline the Oliveira debate, how many chances does Oliveira get? So, that's the two sides to the coin, isn't it?
Absolutely. Who else? Oh, we're still on the captain debate here as well. Derek Weir wants Hanley. Paul Orber says Oliveira trying too hard. Tom Izzard, Tim Closer for captain. I'm not sure where this captain debate has begun really, but I suppose the thing with Closer would be, is he going to be here long term? We've got a bit of that, which will be in the paper for you later this week, because we spoke to Tim on Friday about his future, so keep an eye out for that. But a year left on his contract when it comes to the summer. He turns 30 in May as well, so he's only going to be a captain around here if he commits to a long-term deal, I would have thought, isn't it?
No, I personally don't see him here beyond the end of the season, but things will play out, and that'll probably be financial rather than anything else. I think that's the reality of where Norwich are going to be in the summer. We've heard it from Webber, we've heard it from Farke. Do you want to lose a House and a Jacob Murphy? Dorrans to a lesser extent, even Pritchard. No, on a purely footballing level, you don't, because they're good players, some of the best in that division. But the finances, I'm afraid, sounds like a debate we have to continue to have. But that is the reality, and that will dictate a lot of what happens in the summer. Certainly, broaden it out. Wes Hulan not making the 18 for the derby. I think it's pretty clear now how that one's going to play out. I think there might be a testimonial, but I don't think we'll be seeing Wes in yellow next season. Obviously, that's on a purely sort of personal level. Will be sad to see, given this service, but I think that's the reality. And unfortunately, Closer is all part of that debate. And I've seen another question asking about Matt Jarvis. Any news about Matt Jarvis? Well, in terms of his footballing side of things, then I think he will, probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks, if there's no setback, be pushing for first team spot. But again, wrote about it 2 or 3 weeks back. I think in the summer, contractually, there might be a part of the ways there as well, because he's on decent money. He's a signing from the Premier League era. They can't really afford to pay those type of wages anymore. So, this is going to be a massive summer again. We're obviously got a few more games to go, but barring a bizarre turn of events, I don't think we'll be needing to worry about a playoff push. So attention will increasingly turn towards the summer and who stays and who goes.
Yeah, I think we'll probably see Matt Jarvis in under-23s action in the next few weeks, which reminds me, the under-23s played last night. They won 2-0 away to West Brom, playing at Kidderminster Harriers Stadium. Savas Morgos, Greek midfielder they signed from Arsenal in the summer, or when he was released from Arsenal at least, scored both of the goals, one of them a very good free kick. And Matt Gill has said afterwards in the quotes that the club have put out that it reminded him of Wes Houlihan, which is high praise indeed, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, no pressure. I've not seen the guy. You've seen him play, so
yeah, I've seen a little bit of him.
If he's in that mould, then there'll be a nice little battle. Him and Cantwell coming through, won't there? As the next gen, as it were. Because sounding a bit depressive here, I know. But obviously, Maddison's not going to be with us. I don't think so. He's another one they will need to find a replacement for. So yeah, probably a bit too soon from the start of next season. But that's the mantra now, isn't it? Develop their own. Make that academy sing and get lads into the first team. And if he's getting compared by his coach to Wes Houlihan, that's a good sign.
Let's hope it doesn't have the impact that the mini Messi comment of Pochettino seems to have had on Marcus Edwards, who we're still not sure if he's really involved in the first team here or not, or if he's at the training ground or
You've answered Dave House's question. What's the current situation with Marcus Edwards?
Well, we've asked Daniel about it several times, and as far as we know, he's training, but he's just not up to the standard they thought he was.
Well, yeah, that's probably true, but much like Wes, much like Sean Raggett, they're just Marley Watkins, occasionally, these guys aren't making the 18 on a match day. They're not convincing the head coach enough to believe that they're that close to the 11 that if required, they can come off the bench and influence a game at championship level. So ultimately, the message for all of those guys is, you need to work harder in training. You need to show me you can step up to the mark. And whether it's a guy's come in for a few months from Tottenham, or whether it's somebody like Raggett who's here for 2 or 3 years, it's probably irrelevant, really. If they're not ready here and now, then they're not going to make the 18.
Yeah, well, we shall see. We've been told how good Marcus Edwards is with the ball, but we're yet to find out. Just to come full circle and back to Savas Morgos, as we were talking about him, the times I've seen him, he was sort of more similar to Adam Phillips, which is why I was a little bit surprised to hear him compared to Wes Houlihan, but that's a good comparison to make. And while I remember as well, the FA Youth Cup date has been confirmed for next Tuesday night, 27th of February. That's over on PinkUn.com now for the full details. Tickets go on sale tomorrow lunchtime. Hopefully going to be a good crowd for that FA Youth Cup quarter-final against Birmingham. There is supposed to be an under-23s game on Monday night as well, and that was scheduled for Carrow Road, but I think that's probably going to be moved elsewhere. That's not confirmed yet, but with Bolton at home for the first team Saturday, that would mean 3 games in 4 days, so that's probably not going to be good for the Carrow Road pitch. And of course they moved a recent under-23s game to St George's Park. That one's supposed to be against Bury, so wouldn't take a genius to put 2 and 2 together and come up with St George's Park again. But let's get back to your comment. We've already answered Dave Howes. Kevin Andrews, Maddison is the only attacking player with his name written on the team sheet in permanent ink, I'm guessing is probably the missing word there, Kevin. Agree with that, Pat?
Yeah, 100%, yep.
Okay, Paul Orber, Oliveira has been given his chance, so many chances. Isn't it time for someone else to have a go? Barry Young, can we keep Reed? This is something that came up in our Q&A yesterday lunchtime. He's under contract at Southampton until 2021, so they've got a lot of faith in him. I don't think it's particularly likely, is it, Pat?
No, I think that would fly in the face of what Southampton try to do, which is develop players for their first team. Which is, to my mind, how Norwich are trying to do it as well. But Southampton's academy has been very highly rated down the years. You look at the players they've produced, and I don't get the sense that they're a club who develop players then to basically let them move on. The difficulty is for Harrison Reed, of course, if Southampton retain their status, is he closer to their Premier League? I mean, it's one thing, as we're talking about the Cantwells and the Morgoses of this world, Phillips, to make the step up into a Championship side, but to do that into the Premier League is a massive leap. So you don't see him being anywhere near their first team next season. But then again, their manager's under pressure. A lot of things can happen. New broom comes in the summer. It's clean sheet of paper for all those players, and I'm sure he'll go back and initially be part of their plans. But noticed there was another question in a similar vein about Gunn. You know, is there any potential for Gunn beyond the end of the season?
Sam Gooderham with a question there.
Yeah, you'd have to say no, because we can all see that there is a keeper who is really probably too good for the Championship now, is the brutal reality. And if you're Man City and you're thinking about development for Angus, you probably want him playing in the Premier League next season. I think it's highly unlikely / not going to happen that he's going to be Man City's number one next season, but I think they would feel they could probably move him into a mid to lower end Premier League club. So I guess it's a watch this space. If you're talking from Norwich's perspective, all day long they'd want him back, because he's proven himself probably one of the best English keepers in the country. He's certainly up and coming keepers, but the only flip side to that is, of course, Remy Matthews is, you know, he's gone out to Plymouth. He's getting a lot of positive headlines, isn't he? He seems to be really grasping the nettle. And we're talking here about developing your own. Well, there's a guy who's come through at Norwich, Norfolk lad. He needs a chance, doesn't he? Because what is he now? 22, 23?
He's 24 now.
He's 24.
Big guy. He's had loan spells at Doncaster, Hamilton, now at Plymouth. He seems to be doing well. Saved a penalty recently as well. And when he joined Plymouth in October initially, they were bottom of the table. Still bottom in December. And they're now 7th at a point outside the playoffs.
Yeah, which is phenomenal. So, we can talk about Gunn, but I personally would like to see what Matthews is made of. Can he make the step up? Because if not, then it's not in his interest, and it's not in Norwich's really to have him around the place. I don't see McGovern really coming back in from the cold. I think he's another one. If they could, they would move him on this coming summer. So, we're obviously sort of supposed to be speaking about Wolves. We'll spend a lot of time here on what could happen in the summer. I think that is the reality now. I think it is increasingly going to be about can Norwich navigate a path through some very, very difficult decisions in many areas of the squad. Some will be forced onto them in terms of lads who will probably have to be moved on, but obviously whatever they're trying to do financially, much like in the last 2 windows, lowering the wage bill, bringing in a transfer surplus, fine, but all the time trying to get a competitive squad together who can be competitive at the top end of the Championship. It's a very difficult balancing act. And
we're saying this under the presumption that they're not going to be going up, because of course the hopes of that are very slim at the moment, and they're probably only chasing 5th and 6th place at this point as well. But Angus, of course, got into the England squad last year, so that guy is going to be on people's radars. And if you look at one of the teams that get promoted, if they're looking for a goalkeeper, he's going to be probably very near the top of their list. Back on to Oliveira, last few comments. We'll be wrapping up fairly soon, and we just want to talk about Grant Hanley a little bit as well, because we spoke to him. Tom Izzard, sell Nelson to get a hungry player, someone who really wants to play hard for his place and the team, which is all well and good, but there's still 14 games left of the season, so I don't think you want an unhappy Nelson Oliveira clogging up the dressing room, do you? And James Kent on a similar subject. Good comments on the goals front, guys. How much do you think it has to do with Nelson and Josh Murphy both not scoring? Also, do you think these two are Farke-type players, and do you see them both being here next season? Well, Josh, yes. I don't think Josh, unless he finishes the season with a real burst and manages to get his total goals up to sort of 12, 13, I can't see him getting a Premier League move, can you?
No, not at the moment, definitely not. No. For reasons already stated, where he is now and where his brother was at this time last season is miles apart for me. And Premier League clubs, I think there's one young player they'll be looking for at Norwich, and it goes by the name of Madison. So no, I wouldn't think Josh would be attracting too much in the way of top flight interest as it stands. But as I say, 6 months down the line, it could be all different, but he needs to find that consistency in his game. And it's a fair point I think James was making there, that I'm not sure it is helping him trying to play him down the centre, because it didn't feel that he'd absolutely blossomed as a wide player yet. It's almost like he was still growing into that position, and with this tweak, with Madison coming more central behind Oliveira and Murphy, I'm not sure, that's almost in its own entirety another position. It's a lot to ask him, to try and play that role when he hasn't really played it. I know he played down the centre, at development level as and when, but it's a different kettle of fish, isn't it? And you could see on Sunday that both of them, certainly with their back to goal, they're just that's not their game. And increasingly Norwich were getting forced to hit it long, bypassing midfield, which was testament to Ipswich and their pressing. But backs to goal, facing central defenders, it's just not their game at all. They need balls in behind or balls to feet. And I think it's a fair point. I think Oliveira and Murphy, in an attacking sense, it's not working. So how long do you persist?
And Josh kept pulling out wide because that's where he wants to be. I suppose if traditionally you would have a 3-4-3, but really Norwich are playing with a 3-4-1-2 at the moment, aren't they? With Maddison in behind the two. So perhaps if Maddison wasn't in the team and you had Hernandez and Murphy either side of Oliveira, it might work. But I'd imagine we'll probably find that out between now and the end of the season. Paul Albert asks, where's testimonial news? Nothing yet. Of course, the UEFA Cup 25th anniversary game is coming up against Inter Forever. That is in May. Again, have a look at PinkUn.com. The details of the Nest were unveiled last night, the £9 million project by the Community Sports Foundation, which they're building at the old Anglian Windows site near Norwich Airport. That looks a very impressive facility, and they've got another £2.5 million they need to raise yet. Full details of that, as I say, on PinkUn.com. And that game against Inter Forever is raising funds for that. Finally, Grant Hanley, we spoke to him. A bit of a man of few words, isn't he? He's a real man's man, but a man's man. I wouldn't mess with him. I mean, he maybe short, sharp answers, but he seems in a good place at the moment. Like he's got a bit of confidence running through his veins. Like he's enjoying himself. Yeah.
To use a cliche, he does his talking on the pitch, that man, doesn't he? And boy, is he making a lot of noise at the minute. Not only is he the rock at the back, but he's good enough now to get forward and provide assists for another centre back in Tim Closer. You have to be impressed with him. He really has come to the fore, and I think, and he said it himself today, that he's basically gone from feeling that he's a big part player at Newcastle, sitting on the bench, coming in for the odd game here or there, to now he's effectively the main man defensively. He's playing every week, and with that, you can see the confidence has flooded back into his game, and he looks like the player he was at Blackburn when he got a £5 million move to Newcastle. That's looking increasingly like excellent business, because he's got a bit more experience than these guys. They've fetched him from overseas markets, and B, he's also got the physicality, and they're two attributes you can't underestimate in the Championship, because Norwich don't have a massive amount of that, certainly defensively, and throughout the side really. But he is, I would say now, for me, along with Maddison, the first two names on the team sheet.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like Tim Closer's description of him after the game, that Grant doesn't run past players, he runs through them. And Grant seemed to quite like that when it was put to him as well today, didn't he? So I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's captain when the first ball was kicked of the Championship season next season. Presumed it's going to be a Championship season again there,
I think it's a safe bet,
unfortunately. But I like Grant Hanley a lot, and to be fair to him, the determination he showed for that goal on Sunday was absolutely cracking. Right, I think we can wrap it up there, Pad. Of course, me, Michael and Paddy will all be at Molyneux tomorrow night. We will have our usual team news video for you ahead of the game. Obviously going to be very difficult against the league leaders, but we'll see how they get on, and then it's on to Bolton on Saturday. One other thing to look out for, we recorded the latest PinkUn.com podcast yesterday, me and Michael alongside Peter Raven and Ian Clark, of course one of our columnists, and Pete Raven, the daddy of PinkUn.com, from when it was given birth to back in the day, whatever year that was, the birth of the internet. So we'll wrap it up there, and you can watch all those videos with Daniel Farke and Grant Hanley on the PinkUn YouTube channel. Cheers.